Hello and welcome to Beach View, our podcast about different things.
Today we have a guest speaker with us. This is my husband, Travis. Hi, Travis.
Hello.
Well, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, my pleasure.
And today we're going to talk about album art. So, the little artwork that's on albums, or used to be when you could buy them in stores. I feel like artwork on albums, on the cover of albums, has sort of like a unique relationship with albums. Other mass market media works have cover art, like movie posters, book covers, but I feel like only with albums has it become like a core to the identity of it. Whereas other mediums, it's more utilitarian, like purely to sort of entice customers into buying. But with albums, it's really become something special. So I figured, let's talk about it.
Yeah, so I agree with that. Like, a lot of times I'll buy books, and you're right, like the cover doesn't really have anything to do with the content. So that's, to me, the biggest example of that. Like, it's just kind of like, it is to entice you to buy it. But for albums, and you said like when people used to buy albums, you would see it a lot. But I think you still do when you're streaming. You still see that album cover art. So I think it's still very much relevant. But I do think that you're absolutely right that the album cover is part of the visual of what the album is, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about some examples of that.
Like album art that's core to the album experience?
Yeah, or just like some cool albums that you remember, or like what are some examples that you have found that it's definitely like part of the album?
Well, I feel like most the albums I've listened to, that's definitely like you have sort of like an aesthetic you're going for when you release an album, and that carries over not just with the music, but with like when you're giving interviews and doing photo shoots and your concerts and stuff as an artist. And that's also like the album art's sort of like your first statement of that aesthetic. And I feel like most albums, and to a greater and lesser extent, but most albums do carry that, and that does have something to do with the work.
Yeah. I like to try to figure out what the album art is referencing, or like how it's related to the work. Trav, what do you think?
So I'm just taking in what y'all saying because I have quite a different identity of what album art does for the actual album itself. And I tend to not find the correlation between the album art and the actual album itself. But a lot of times I find more of a depiction of the band or the group, kind of what they represent, or kind of the themes that they go for, but not particularly in the songs. So
okay.
I combed through a lot of album covers that I was familiar with from over the years, and just kind of looked back at those kind of things. And I was having such a hard time finding correlations between the songs that I remembered and what was in these songs, and how the album art would represent that. But I tend to have a little bit skewed or different takes on things than most people. A lot of times I don't necessarily get the same impact from things as whether it's a poem or a book or a song verse that most people do. So I think it's solely up to the listener or the viewer's perception.
Yeah, I could see that. So I agree that sometimes I think it is more about the band than necessarily what's in the album, because there are cases where like the cover just doesn't really match with the album. But I think a lot of times it is, like I said, a visual that goes along with the content. So I see it both ways.
Yeah, I feel like even if it is just representing the band or something, that still has an impact on the work. Or maybe it's just me that I'm doing like the reverse, not that there's like the album art is representative of the music, but because when I'm listening to the music, I usually see the album art, I associate the two.
Yeah, and that's typically what I like to do as well, especially now streaming music. I find it really nice to have the art available to let you know what album it was actually from, because in an
Yeah.
earlier podcast, y'all were talking about the relevancy of albums. And I do think that the relevance of a complete album is kind of dwindling, but the art itself kind of helps me relate back to which particular album it came off of.
Yeah, that's true. It's like a visual reminder.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, like I was saying, I think I might do it backwards. Like, the art becomes associated with the music rather than like when I listen to a song, sometimes I think of it as associated with a certain color because of the color of the album art.
Yes, okay.
I might do that regardless of whether or not the art is really like core to the content of the music and lyrics.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, yeah, I like how each of us has a different kind of take on this. So that's what makes it interesting to me. So, what are some of your favorites?
Oh, although on that point, now that I'm thinking about it, one of my favorite album arts is Loveless by My Bloody Valentine, and I think that one
Okay.
does sort of capture the vibe, because
Yeah.
it's like a guitar that's kind of like washed out, and I don't know the exact artistic terms, but like faded and fringing, like kind of. It's got like it's superimposed over a few images. It's got this like cloudy feel to it. And I feel like that really captures something musically about the album. Like, it's a lot of really, like, atmospheric guitar music.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, on your point, yeah, I talked myself into finding one, I guess.
See, that's what I was wondering. So, one of them that I think of, and this goes like back to like, I guess it was the 90s, the No Doubt album, Tragic Kingdom. And on the cover, it's like Gwen Stefani, of course, and she's wearing this like kind of red dress with red shoes, and she's like kind of posed at the front, you know, the forefront, but she's holding like a rotten, I think it's a peach, and there's like a tree, and the rest of the band is like kind of in the background, but there's these like rotten peaches and like flies and stuff. And I was kind of like, oh, I don't, you know, like thinking about how does that relate to like the band. It was like, you know, very ska at the time, I think. How does that relate to that, or the songs on it? I don't know if you're familiar with that, but Travis, you probably are.
Yeah, definitely. So Bryce had mentioned something a second ago that kind of made me think of different artists in a different way, but he said he likes to picture a color with a particular song. And it reminds me of actually one of my favorite current album covers. I think it was from like 2017, but it's more modern. Is by an artist called Emmett Fenn, and it's very monochromatic, which suits my style, and it draws my eye in. But it uses a like a shading on the particular artwork itself, so it's kind of like a graduated shading. Well, in his earlier album, it was the same visual setup, but using a different hue or a different tone. So when you had mentioned that earlier, it really piqued my interest in it, because I do the same thing with that. I think either purple or gray, what album it came off of.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting.
Oh, well, maybe that's why I picture, like, if I hear No Doubt, like, you know, like red or orange or like a bright sunny, you know, like it's kind of a high energy color, right?
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
but maybe it's because of the album, like the album cover art that I associate with it, you know?
Yeah,
And that image has stuck with me like since the 90s, right?
yeah, and they like you were saying, they've always been associated with more high energy music, or
Yeah.
it's definitely been more upbeat than otherwise.
Yeah. But you do associate like certain colors. That's kind of crazy. I never thought of it that way.
Huh.
Interesting.
Learned something new.
So another one that I always thought was kind of cool was Notorious B.I.G., his album Ready to Die. And on the album, it's just like very plain, but it's like a picture of like baby Biggie. Like it's just like a little baby. It's supposed to be Biggie, like sitting there. And I thought that has always been kind of cool, because it's like the innocence of a baby, but like the album's like gangster rap. And then he ended up dying, like, shortly after that. So it was kind of like just totally, I guess it's like juxtaposed. Like, there was nothing really innocent about that. Or maybe it's like going from being innocent to, like, being wrapped up in the game and being murdered. I don't know. I thought that was kind of a cool one.
Yeah, so that's definitely a iconic cover, and it's been reproduced by several other artists since then.
Right.
Most notably, like I right away as soon as you say that album, I think of The Game.
Oh yeah.
The documentary shared a similar feel, and also like Lil Wayne with his
Lil Wayne, yeah.
His Carter series, depicts him as a child with the facial tattoos and things.
Yeah. Like, it's definitely been riffed off of.
Yeah, definitely.
Since then, yeah. So that was definitely iconic. But I always think of that when I hear, B.I.G., which isn't that often, but
no, but it's an
Yeah.
iconic cover that people often imitate.
Yeah. But I do try to figure out, like, okay, how did they arrive at this cover? Like, what was the thought process that went into it? Like, how is it representative of either the artist or what's, like, in the album?
Oh, I don't know if I even think that, like, deeply about it. I'm just like, oh yeah, this is some cool art.
Yeah, no, I definitely think of album covers as cool art, and to me, it's part of the whole experience of listening to the artist's music, and I like how some of them, even now, when you say, like, album art isn't necessarily seen as much, maybe, but even now, like, well, I guess not now, but this example is, do you remember the Drake album? So that was probably what, like 5-6 years ago, where it was like just writing. It was like scribbled on there. Like, if you're reading this, it's too late. Yeah. And that, it kind of took off, like, in the online world, like, where people were like, like writing their own, like making their own kind of cover just to, like, fit their narrative, like kind of like the whole Straight Outta Compton became a thing. It was like that, but with the Drake album. So I think that's kind of funny when, we might not think that album covers really resonate with people, but when they take it and make it into, like, basically a meme, I think that's kind of cool. Like, it's still relevant enough to become, like, all over the internet,
Well, if you're on streaming, you still see them, right?
Yeah, but I mean, like, not everybody may pay attention to that,
I guess. I certainly do.
I mean, I do. Yeah, I do. Travis does. So.
Yeah. So what's interesting to me is that a lot of these covers, they could be also associated with whatever period in time you're listening to. So what I particularly remember is back in late 90s, early 2000s, like a lot of the rap albums from local artists and like the southern hip hop scene was all very, like, gaudy, like over concentrated with like just random things of whether it's fashion or riches, like diamonds and chalices and
they were addicted to money, cars, and clothes.
Yeah, exactly. So it was very representative. Back to what you said early on, is that it does essentially wrap up everything that is in the album, but it's also a continuous theme representative of the artist as well, of what they're trying to convey about themselves, that, they have stacks on stacks on stacks.
Right. That's true. A lot of those early 2000s or late 90s ones had all that, bling everywhere.
Yeah.
Diamonds, cars. Yeah. That kind of stuff.
And then on a flip side, like when you were talking earlier about things being often imitated, like one of the most iconic albums out there is the Beatles' Abbey Road album. And they have people constantly taking pictures, like doing a crosswalk scene and all that stuff.
They have, like, a live cam on Abbey Road now.
Yeah. So it's that kind of stuff so interesting because it was just a neat picture, and it's one of the most iconic albums that I can think of.
Yeah, it's, like, instantly recognizable.
Yeah, definitely.
And anytime anybody travels there, they take the same picture.
Yeah, and you don't even have to be familiar with the band's work, but you know what they, you recognize that photo.
Yeah, so they, like, took off in pop culture.
So do we have any favorites we want to shout out? Album arts? Like, Y'all have anything?
Favorites. Let me think about that.
So there was one album that immediately came to mind, and I don't know who it was, but and I've been searching for it to figure out who it was. But it was based off of the MC Escher Staircase drawings, and it was like a black and white cover, and that has always been my favorite. And I've been looking for it, trying to find out exactly what band it was, but for some reason I can't figure out that. But that has always been one of my favorites. I've always liked that style of artwork, the kind of the illusion, trickery type of artwork.
Okay, so I remember, like, I can picture this album cover that you're talking about, but I do not remember who it was either.
Yeah.
It had to be, like, late 90s, early 2000s. And I guess those stick in our minds because that's when, like, I guess we started buying CDs, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's pretty much kind of like, every generation feels like they had the best music, but I felt like that part of time between, I'd say, 97, 98 to 2002 was concentrated with such good variety in music.
Yeah. I don't feel like it was the best. Like, I never feel like, oh, we had the best music growing up. But I think those stay with you because it's, I guess, for me is when I really started getting into music.
Yeah.
When music became, like, a thing for me, you know?
Yeah, definitely.
But I don't know who that artist is with the Escher Stairs. But I'm gonna have to keep looking that up too.
Yeah, it's been driving me nuts, and I don't think I'm gonna be able to find it. But it's one of those ones that immediately pops out to me.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is, so.
Yeah. Well, okay. So these aren't my favorite albums, but I always remember them. It was the Smashing Pumpkins, and they had, I don't even know the names of the albums, but they had 2 CDs, 2 albums. One was red and one was blue. It was like a kind of like a drawing of like a face. Do y'all remember that? The only reason I remember it is because John, our brother, drew it. Like, and he drew one in red and one in blue, and it was like ink drawings, and it looked like exactly like the covers. I was just like, oh, it looks so cool. But I don't remember what albums they were, but I'm pretty sure it was Smashing Pumpkins.
I don't remember those particularly, but the one that sticks out for me were like their first, within their first couple, it was like early 90s. It was a Siamese Dream album and Melancholy and Infinite Sadness. Those 2 I always remember, but after that it's kind of like I didn't continue following them, so I just really don't remember.
They weren't as popular after that.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I want to look these up and see, like, what were they?
Yeah.
But kind of cool. What about you, Bryce? You have a favorite besides My Bloody Valentine?
I've got a few. I made a list. I don't know how many of those you want to hear, but...
Oh, let's hear them.
Bring them on.
So, I like a lot of Radiohead's album art, in particular, OK Computer, Kid A, and Amnesiac. I think those are really good and representative of the album. I like the Glow Part 2, which has like a kind of cartoonish elephant on it, is I guess how I would describe it. That's by the Microphones. So Jealous by Tegan and Sara. It's a bit like a blob of paper hearts. It's really like stylized. I think it's a really striking image. Songs About Leaving by Carissa's Weird, which is a really like indie band from Seattle in the mid-2000s. That it's some like drawn lions that are coughing blood. So
ooh,
yeah.
That's cool. And do you just like those albums or you like those covers?
I like them both, but I mean, I remember them really well because I like those albums, but yeah. Because there's plenty of albums I like that I also don't like the covers, so.
Yeah. That's true.
Alright, y'all got any more?
Yeah, I think it was just yesterday, Trav and I were talking about Kanye, the cover where he has the mountains in the background and it has written on it, isn't it like, I hate being bipolar, it's awesome. And
that's a recent one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a more recent one. And so we were just like, like, what do you think? Like Travis said, it's kind of a bleak background. I was like, well, I don't think it's bleak. I think it's just like the mountains. But I thought it was like the mountains maybe in Wyoming, because I know like Kanye goes there to like record and has a house and stuff there. So I just thought that was kind of like one of those things. But I love how he says, I hate being bipolar. It's awesome. Because in his music, he also says like, it's not a disability, it's a superpower, you know? And so, anyway, I thought that was kind of representative of both like his life and what he's, you know, rapping about.
Well, speaking of Kanye West, he did an album with Kid Cudi. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And their album they did together, Kids See Ghosts, I think is really good looking.
I like a lot of Kanye's album covers. He's got another one for My Dark Twisted Fantasy. I think that's pretty cool because early on it was like a drawing of him and a phoenix, and for some reason it came out that it was banned because it was like graphically, I guess, inappropriate.
Yeah, they're...
Yeah, so they changed the album cover to...
Wait, well, I don't understand why.
So, when he released My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, the original album artwork's explicit, and it wouldn't get sold in stores because of that.
Yeah, and so what they did is they made two alternate album covers, and I think both of them are really cool. Like one has a dancer on the front of it, and the other one is just kind of like the image, but it's grade, kind of censored, has censorship over it. But I thought they were pretty cool. They were just pretty plain, but I always thought those were pretty neat. But it also ties back to another very iconic album cover, which is Nirvana's Nevermind. Because that had
I remember that one.
Yeah, so that one had nudity on it, and that was Kanye's big thing. Was like, okay, so mine had nudity, but it was also like an animated version of nudity or a cartoon version, stylized nudity.
Right,
and he's like,
was
this was a baby, like a human
nude
picture, and so why was that okay, but mine's censored? You know, so it kind of tied into that.
Point.
Yeah. So it tied into that iconic cover, so it's pretty neat, you know. But he's got some cool stuff.
Yeah, he does, and I think that goes along with, like, to me, Kanye's superpower is that he's always been like just super creative, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that ties right into his whole persona. But yeah, that Nirvana is like one of the most iconic covers.
Yeah, definitely. That's one that I remember. I mean, immediately, even if you've never heard their work, most people know that cover.
Yeah. Do you know that cover, Bryce?
Yes, I know that cover.
I didn't know because it was like before your
Yeah, but Nirvana's still...
Yeah, Nirvana's still relevant.
They're not hard to find to listen to. I've never been like entirely out of the limelight.
Yeah, that's true. Kind of cool, huh? I'm trying to think of another album that like... Well, okay, I wouldn't say this is my favorite, but I remember it very well. I think, well, very well. I think it was Local H. They had an album back in the day, and it was like, who's that little weird guy from like Mad TV? You know what I'm talking about? Like the little kind of drawing guy. But he had like coins over his eyes, and it was just kind of a little creepy. Like, why would you put that on your album cover? And I guess that's why it always like kind of stood out to me.
I'm looking this up and I don't like it.
Yeah, you see it?
Yeah.
I gotta look it up too now.
I think the album's called As Good As Dead.
Oh, yeah. Well, that makes sense for the album cover.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, it wasn't the Mad TV guy, but it was creepy anyway. So I was kind of remembering that wrong. But yeah, isn't it creepy?
I don't know why, but I don't know if it's just the time period, but it also reminds me of the music video from Silverchair with that weird pig guy running around.
Oh my god, that like used to creep me out. For real. That definitely creeped me out. Oh man. You know, I don't know if those Red and Blue albums were Smashing Pumpkins. Now I'm thinking there's somebody else.
From what I remember from their album art, I don't know if they have one like that, but it could be an album I don't know.
It must have been somebody else. It was some other band, I think, maybe in the 90s or early 2000s.
Yeah, I can't really think of it because Immediately when you said that different colors, I was thinking of Weezer because I thought they
It
produced.
was the Smashing Pumpkins.
It was.
I just found it. But no, go ahead.
What's the
You're talking about
album?
Weezer. It's Melancholy. Oh wait, are you talking about me or Travis?
I was talking to you. Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness?
Yes, and they had a blue one and a red one.
I didn't realize they had two different ones. I
Yeah,
only
no,
remember the.
Yeah, the blue one.
I only
with
remember the
little
blue
space
one.
lady.
Yeah. Yep. Because
No, you
that
have
was
to
the
look
one
it
I
up.
remembered
It's-
the most. That one, and then the Siamese Dream one.
No, this one, it's two different CDs, and I guess it's a CD, maybe not the album cover, right? It's the CD itself.
Oh,
It
it's
had-
on the CD?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's what it is. It's got a blue one and a red one, but they're like lined or like dot drawings, like pen and ink drawings of like
Yeah, okay.
looks like a
yeah,
kind of a
see
kid
it.
face.
Yes. That's not the
Yeah.
album art, that's the
That's
disc
what I was
art.
thinking.
Okay.
No, yeah, I was thinking it was the album art, but it was the disc art. But anyway, okay, Travis, you were saying something about
I was just saying that.
what now?
I thought, I thought that Weezer had like just the band name with a different color for each album, and I don't know why I was thinking that.
They have
because
a lot of those.
Yeah, so I was looking back at the discography for him, and I only saw a couple blue ones, but I could have swore I saw one that was blue, one that was red, yellow, like just all solid backgrounds. And for some reason, when I pull up their history, it's all like stuff that I don't remember at all. I didn't know if my mind was just making all that up or if it was...
Yeah, they
Maybe.
they had a blue one for their first album. Later, they had a green one and a red one. And I think they've
Yeah,
done some
see?
since, but I don't
Yeah,
remember.
I always like those kind of things, you know? I think that's pretty cool.
Where they stick to one,
Yeah.
it's like variations of the same theme.
Exactly.
Yeah. You know what? Another one that I always instantly think of when you're talking about album covers is David Bowie with like the lightning bolts, you
Yeah.
know, on his face. That's an iconic one.
Right, yeah.
I don't know enough about his that album to know of what it was representative of, but I know he had that like kind of alter ego. What was it? You know what I'm talking about? Like where he was like the spaceman.
Ziggy Stardust, was that its name?
Yes. There you go. I could not think of it. Yeah. So I guess it was kind of like representative of that, but that was like before our time. So I don't really know enough to talk on it, but that one's iconic for sure.
Well, do we have anything else to add?
Nope.
So we can go into the next topic. I'm gonna go into a segue. Okay,
All right.
You ready? Wait for it. Well, speaking of cover art, Trav, I know you do some artwork at work. You paint, right? So tell us about like I know you just did. I guess you just clear coated some artwork, right?
Yeah.
What was that about?
So I wouldn't call what I do necessarily artwork, but it's something a little different than my normal day in and day out duties, and I tend to enjoy it a lot. But I do work with two local artists, one of which has his own gallery, and the other one is represented by another gallery. And I did, for one of those artists recently, he does a series of matchbooks, like these giant oversized matchbooks, and he has these big cartoon matches that go in them, and typically it has like a restaurant name or something like that. He also does like these giant luggage bag tags, and with different like flights, like so it may say Delta, United, and they're all dated. They kind of look representative of like I'd say like 60s, 70s. So they're all pretty neat looking, but they're like throwback work. So basically all I do for him is just do a clear coat over the top of it. And then they're displayed, a lot of them are displayed in airports. So he did his last crop of matchbooks are going to the Fort Lauderdale airport. And then all the bag tags that I did in the past, those are all going to the Delta terminal in Atlanta. So those are really interesting to see. And it's one of those things like whenever we travel, I try to keep my eye out and see if I could find any of them, because it's not my particular work, but it's something I had a hand in fooling with. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah. So the other guy I work with, he rides bikes with me, and he's a very good friend of mine. He owns his own gallery, and he does some very kind of obscure artwork. He does a lot of like cartoon looking drawings of animals, but I do all kinds of random things for him. So I painted one of those giant Mardi Gras bead dogs, and he made some kind of like little small animal sculptures that sat on top of him, that I clear coated for him as well. I do pieces of furniture for him. Pretty much anything that can hold paint, he'll get me to do for him. So those are interesting because I could kind of see what's like how other people's minds work through their art, and that's most interesting because I could kind of pick their brain about how did they get to that point, like with their design, or what led them to wanting to do it like that, or what inspired them to do what they're doing.
That's so cool. And I like how like you may not have done the art. Well, in some cases, I mean you do, but I like how like you had a hand in it. So it's kind of like, something you worked on.
Yeah, so
that you can see out in the world, That's kind of
cool.
Yeah,
definitely, because I feel like in a way their vision wouldn't be complete without my helping hand in it, so
yeah,
it's because there's some things that they just don't have the means to do, or they can't because it requires so much equipment or facilities to do it properly. It's not easily accessible for these people, so it's pretty neat. And kind of spin off of that is I do a lot of bike frames on the side, painting bike frames, and most of my artwork on these frames are dictated by the lines of the bikes, so they're not very graphically intense, and I tend to lean more toward like clean lines, just very simplistic designs. But the one I most recently did, after I finished it, we sent the seat post out to Matt to do another drawing on top of the seat post, and he's going to send it back to me to do a clear coat over the top of his artwork. So we both.
So it's like 3 people.
Yeah. So this one
working together.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So this one's my design with his additive, and that's the first of that kind. So that's pretty neat. I mean, that was a kind of a little collaborative effort.
That's cool. I like how everybody's like local.
Yeah, and it's all
working together.
Yeah, so it's neat. I mean, I've gotten to do some one of the more interesting projects that I've done, or more fun projects, was painting a big landscape van, and it's a very simple design, but it was a monochromatic theme, and it was graduated from dark green to like almost like a cream color. But everybody sees this vehicle around town and comments on how it looks and things like that to me. So that's really interesting because the guy who owns the vehicle, he's an artist as well, but his art's with plants. So he does all of the commercial installation for a juice company called Main Squeeze. And they have these elaborate plantscapes on the inside that spell out their logo. So he does all this assembling this plant artwork, and it's just a very interesting connection. So because he's riding around with a little bit of my work, and he passes on my name to people, and me getting to see his work is just like, I don't know how people are so talented with whatever they're working with, whatever media it is. It's just there's people that are immensely talented out there.
Absolutely. I love how many creative people there are. And I feel like everywhere there's so many creative people. And I love when they work together, especially locally, because you could see, the fruit of the labor, right? Like I remember getting excited one time when you and I were driving down, I forget which street in New Orleans, and we're like, oh, look, there's the truck. Yeah. It's like exciting to see like something you worked on. And it really was really pretty, I thought. So good job.
Well, thank you. It's a slightly biased opinion, but it's all good.
Yeah. I mean, anything to encourage creativity.
Yeah, we talk about art and music a lot on this podcast. It's
we do.
Neat.
I feel like really that's our theme. Maybe our intro should be the podcast where we talk about things, but also art and music a lot.
If you think about it, the beach is a kind of art and music.
Oh, I agree.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Completely agree. That's awesome. Yeah. Beach view. All right. Trav, you got anything else?
Not really. I just I find it amusing when people make a connection with some of the bike frames that I did to me, and how people find out about my work. People I may not have known or not associated with will spread my name around as well. So I find that interesting because I have a couple frames out there riding around that are one of a kind, and the owners are really proud of them, and that makes me proud that people out there enjoying something that I did. And I guess especially because I've never really been happy with any of the ones that I've painted. I feel like there's always it just doesn't suit my eye or the color scheme or things like that, but knowing that the owners love it is cool with me. So it's kind of funny. Like I find them to be flawed and imperfect, but everybody else just tends to like them. So it's pretty interesting.
Well, I think that's the artist is always critical of his work, right?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think a lot of artists do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're beautiful, and I think, like, you're definitely, like, gaining this reputation now locally, like, people are, like you said, are passing your name around, people who see the bikes, and look, these people love to spend money on their bikes, okay? Travis included. But no, I think that's really cool that, like, you're getting a reputation. In fact, I'll brag on you for a second if you don't mind, but he's had people who've like brought like motorcycle tanks. I don't know what you call that. I guess it's a gas tank.
Motorcycle tanks.
Yeah, motorcycle tanks, like for him to paint. Like he's done one customer had wanted like his tailgate painted with like a American flag, or like was it an eagle or something?
No, just American flag.
Yeah, kind of an American flag, like flowing. And, the guy has told him, like, so many people have commented on this, and I told him who painted it. And so you've done some really cool, interesting projects, I think, like, that really do have to do with art, not just painting or, like, slapping a layer of paint on, but, like, actual, skill and talent there. So I think that's really cool.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've done everything from furniture to flower pots to... really any guitars. Anything that could hold paint, I will paint it.
Yeah.
It's, if it can accept paint properly, and there won't have any sort of like craftsmanship error down the line, I'm willing to do anything. Because it's interesting to me. It's not just a general day in, day out type of work. It's something a little bit more fun. So, I've painted doorknobs for houses, and sinks, vanities, and pretty much anything you can think of that can hold paint. I've probably painted half of it at least.
That's awesome. What's your favorite thing to paint? Is it the bike?
I think so, because it allows me to design the layout. The only thing I'm not in control with the bike frames is the colors. Typically what they'll do is they'll give me 2, 3, 4 colors to use. And I'll design the layout based off of how the tubes of the bike shaped and what design elements the frame actually has. So that's probably my favorite thing to do, but it is the most labor intensive. It takes me anywhere between 30 and 40 hours to do a bike frame. It's just one of those things, like, it's not about the money when I'm doing that sort of stuff, because it's actually takes me far more time than what kind of money you make off of doing it. But it's more the satisfaction that somebody's out there enjoying something that you did.
That's cool. I love it.
It's interesting you mentioned, like, when you get done with them, you're not happy with them. Because anytime I, write music stuff, I'm always like, right after doing it, man, this kind of sucks. I'm not happy with it. But then if I go back to it months and years later, I'm like, this is pretty good.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's a common thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Even I was the same way with music too. When I played music, I thought I felt very amateur in what I was doing, you know. But if I went back and listened to it a little while later, I was like, it's not as bad as I thought. And then, you know, but it's just one of those things. It's because you're constantly evolving, I guess, as an artist, or, you know, the things that you like, or the things that you do for hobby, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, that's awesome. You creative people. I love it. All right, well.
Anything else to add?
Nope. I think we're
cool
good.
Story, bro.
Want me to close it out?
Yeah.
Well, that is so interesting. Okay, guys. Well, we're going to wrap up. Thank you for listening to Beachview Podcast. Trav, thank you for being our guest speaker today. We really appreciate your input. And Bryce, we'll talk soon, right?
I suppose.
You can't say no. All right, guys.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.